Hi, you're listening to Immigrant Women Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Galina Bilaeva. This is the place for you to get inspired by stories of immigrant women, to learn about nonprofits that serve immigrant communities, and to listen to entrepreneurs who work with women in developing countries. Subscribe to this podcast and get more inspiration and resources at immigrantwomentalk.org.
Hi, I'm Galina Bilaeva, and my guest today is Norma Burnson. And she is the author of Sustainable Food for the Globe, 1 square foot at a time. Norma is the U.S. Navy veteran and avid gardener with over 22 years of experience. And part of Norma's work is creating a program that will help veterans and young adults to get work in food production. Norma, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You look very pretty today.
You do too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Norma, so great to have you. You know, first of all, I wanted to talk about your book, and I can see it right there. Maybe you could show it to us.
As a matter of fact, it's right here. It's, let's see, can you see it?
Yes.
Sustainable Food for the Globe, 1 square foot at a time.
Awesome.
And it's available all over the world now. In the last week, it's been picked up in India, in South Africa, France,
Awesome.
Canada. I mean, it's just going all over the place. And I just received a letter from a rather important person in Switzerland, an ambassador there, who's ready to help me with my second book.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay,
Overwhelmed
let's do
with
it.
success.
The second book will be the same, Sustainable Food for the Globe, but it'll be alternative food sources of ways of producing food. So
Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Like I told you, I don't know much about sustainable food or how it works. So could you please explain the kind of the economics behind it?
sustainable means that you have a set of resources and you make sure that those resources aren't wasted, that those resources are used, recycled, reused. In our situation, since it's gardening, it would be the soil, making sure that the soil stays vibrant and alive. And also, a person, once they buy seeds, teaching them how to collect seeds at the end of the harvest so that they don't have to buy seeds anymore. So it is a self-enclosed garden where you can harvest up to 100 pounds of food in a 4x4 square foot area. So if you have a very small area, you can do it 4x4. But if you have more, you can add extra 4x4 square feet. And they're only 6 inches deep, which means that anybody can get into it, children, adults, elderly. So it's a pretty versatile system. It's square foot gardening. The mastermind, Mr. Mel Bartholomew.
Can you do it at home? Is there enough light in the
Yes.
apartment, for example?
Yes. You can do it inside if you have the right lighting, and you can do it in an apartment if you have an apartment terrace and there's enough light. Yes, you can do it.
So how
And
much is enough?
6 hours. 6 hours a day. And it's very good because it doesn't use too much water. The composition it's a special mix, and it does not use as much water. And because you have an enclosed system, we don't get weeds. You only get the beautiful fruits and vegetables that you plant. So that's
Awesome.
very, very good.
Why did you decide to write this book? Yeah.
In August of this year, or last year, in August of last year, I had an experience with hearing two things. The first one was Mr. Richard Branson, who I admire tremendously. He's a billionaire 8 times over. And he came up with the idea that plan A in the business community is not working, so we should come up with a plan B. But his idea is for young entrepreneurs to go. And of course, I don't see myself jumping in and out of planes and hopping up and down stairs. So I decided I was going to write a book as an answer to his challenge. And by doing so, keeping my copyright instead of it becoming his property. And then the second thing that made me really want to get this book out was the fact that I kept hearing naysayers saying we're going to run out of food by 2030, 2050, 2100. And they, first of all, they didn't give you any option other than we're going to run out of food, period. It's like they didn't look for a solution to the problem. And I got very concerned because I have a 2-year-old grandniece, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's just down the road for her. And so I started doing research, and I ran into all kinds of gardening techniques. And the first one that I wanted to discuss was square foot gardening, because it's very easy, it's inexpensive, it can be put up in one day, and you can start gardening in one day. And again, in a 4x4 square foot area, you can harvest 100 pounds of food. So there are other types of gardening that I will be talking about, such as vertical gardening, wall gardening, and then other ways of creating food, like agronomics, etc. So that will be coming up in the next book.
Right. And do people believe it's possible to harvest so much food on this 4x4?
Well, it doesn't matter if they believe it or not. All I want them to do is try it, because this technique has been around for 30 years. And from my last reading on how many books Mr. Bartholomew has sold, he's sold over 2.5 million books just recently. So obviously 2.5 million people are producing a heck of a lot of food. One of the persons that I interview in the book, her name is Kimberly Roman, and she is a teacher, and her main thing is teaching people how to set up the gardens, how to plant the seeds the best way, and her motto is a small investment in a huge harvest. So it has been done over and over for 30 years. So if people don't believe it, just go on YouTube and look at all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures of square foot gardening, and of course Mr. Bartholomew's classes. They're free, so right there you can look at it and say, oh, okay.
I'll put up
The hardest part is just getting over, if you've never gardened, it's just getting over the fact that you got to learn. So you take the first step and everything else follows.
Right. So how long does it take to take care of this garden every day?
Probably 10 minutes.
Really? And then you change the soil, you buy the new soil?
Actually, you do not need to change the soil. The soil is there, and it's composition, and I wish I knew the composition because it is a secret formula. It's called Mel's formula, but it has 3 different types of ingredients that they constantly create new bacteria, new fauna, new anything that the soil needs, so it does not deplete the soil. And second, because it is a 4x4 square foot system, which is on the bottom, it's either plastic or concrete or even wood. It depends on how you want to build it. There will be no weeds, and that means there will be no competition on the plants. All you get are what you plant. There they go.
Hello.
Uh, that was Bubbles and Flirt going up to check the door.
I think they just meant to say that you've been busy for too long now. How often do you harvest?
We harvest it. Actually, we try to keep continuously growing. We grow the things that grow in the spring and the summer, and then in the winter. There are techniques that you can put a what is that called, a greenhouse over it, and it's with bamboo and plastic. So they're harvesting in Alaska as we speak, and so it can be year round. Of course, if you do very well in your first year and you have enough to sell and you enjoy what you're doing, there's nothing stopping you from creating a second box. And there's nothing stopping you from teaching other people in the community how to do the square foot gardening.
So basically, you harvest something and then you immediately put something new in the soil. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um,
And we save the seeds.
right.
We don't want to be buying seeds over and over, and we want to buy good seeds, not the ones that have been taken by scientists and modified. We want to get organic seeds, good seeds.
Okay. So, Norma, why do you love gardening?
Oh, this is going to sound very odd, but whenever I'm in a garden, especially a very lush garden, I have this experience where I feel very close to the creator. When you sit in a garden with flowers, with birds in there, and butterflies and hummingbirds, and there's fruits and vegetables, but all the greenery, it just makes my spirit soar. It's just the most wonderful feeling, and it happens to me every time I go to a big garden or a small garden. And I always tell whoever's with me, because they say, oh, you and you think about this being something from the universe or something created by a greater power. And I just turn around and say, well, make me one. Just make one right now. And of course it can. It's a very natural thing. It comes from the earth. And I find it fascinating that it's on faith, because someone tells you these are seeds, follow these instructions, and in 12, 14, 16 weeks, you're going to be eating tomatoes or peppers or what have you. And it happens. It happens.
Are their seeds expensive?
Not now. I'm we're people in the gardening field and in the agricultural field. We're very concerned with certain companies wanting to own the privilege of seeds. Yes, and have made it law that you can only use their seeds. Their seeds are scientifically modified and have been shown to cause cancer. They have been shown to cause deformities. So getting seeds now is a good time. And they're not very expensive. But with the current situation of people, these naysayers, passing around these horrible things that we're going to run out of food, we're going to have so many people, there's just not going to be enough stuff. People are going to panic. It's going to be like, okay, I've got my garden, there's my guard, So I really feel that it's a disservice to humanity, disservice to creative people and gardeners to say that we're going to run out of food, because there are thousands of ways to create food, and it can be produced in abundance. And the other thing that is disturbing is there is so much wasted food. Just counting the United States and England, there's enough food this minute wasted, thrown away, that if we rescheduled it, refurbished, I'm looking for, redistributed it, it could feed the world population today 3 times over. So there is for anyone that's listening, there is a video called "Taste the Waste." I would encourage you to look at it. It's on YouTube, and it's just appalling to see how the food is thrown out. It's thrown out because it has the tomato isn't red enough, or the tomato has a little skin blemish, or I mean very minute things. And there are people that wouldn't care if the tomato had a blemish on it. They would like something to feed their family. So.
Right. So, I have a question about low-income families, for example. They have no other sources of income and but to garden. Is it legal for them to sell their produce on a farmer's market or to their neighbors? Do they have to have some sort of license?
In that respect, you can create a community garden, and usually it's run by the church or by the school, and they can, what they do is they create a huge garden. The families work side by side with the children, and each family has a little plot, or if they do it as a co-op, then certain baskets of food are given away every week of what's being harvested. So like, let's say, well, it's time for the corn. Everybody gets corn that week, plus whatever else, if it's time for peppers and tomatoes or cucumbers, that's what we get. So there are. This type of gardening can be used in schools. It can be used on roofs, which you sent me a picture of a rooftop gardening. I have seen it done on a bus, which I promised to send you a picture.
Wow.
Our idea is we're not going to run out of space because houses are full of roofs. So why don't we just start harvesting from the roof? And it would really help keep a lot of our water in on the earth, because it wouldn't be flowing into the ground and making all kinds of mess. So I'm sure if we have a lot of rain, but that we can use a lot of the resources that we have in a much natural and sustainable way.
Right. So you're saying that even in a polluted city, you can still do that and have good vegetables, and
yes,
it's enough of sun, it's enough of natural kind of factor to produce this food.
It's not unnatural. It's very natural. It's yes, you can produce it. If I live in Chicago and I live near an airport, so I would say yes, my area is very polluted. So what I did was I grew some trees around my perimeters to make sure that I have clean air. And then I have my garden in the area where the trees are, in the middle, of course, because they need the sun. But they do beautifully, and neighbors do the same. This reminds me a lot of World War II and what they used to call the Victory Garden. And back then, nobody said, oh, it's impossible. They just went and did it. And the Victory Garden was very difficult because you had to plow it and lift the soil and put the manure in and all kinds of things. and you had to like do rows and rows and rows. Here you have a box. And if you're on a wheelchair or like me that you need a cane, you can lift it and it can be, above the ground 4 feet. And if you think about it, 4x4, if you can, a child can stretch into 4x4. An adult can stretch into 4x4, and then just walk around 4x4. So it's not a thing that's very stressful. Farming the old-fashioned way is very hard. This is very much fun.
So, not to get overwhelmed, what would you recommend to start with?
I would recommend that you go to YouTube and look at Mr. Mel Bartholomew's Square Foot Gardening videos. And they're free. Start from there. If you can afford it, buy his new book or get it from the library. That's what I would recommend. The reason that I wrote the book is I wanted to get life experiences from actual people who do garden. And one of the people that I interviewed, his name was Bill, and he started with a 4x4 square foot garden, and he ended up having 12 boxes. And it was really interesting because he lived in a small neighborhood, and he and his friends would come out and they were like going to the grocery. Hey, what do you want for dinner tonight? And the group started fishing and everything. So there is sustainability right there. There's cohesiveness. It brings the community together. There's a lot of pluses.
How is it related to? Yeah, by the way, I wanted to mention that we should celebrate the stories of people who do that on the buses, who do that gardening on the roofs, and instead of saying, "Oh yeah, like there's nothing we can do,"
Mm-hmm.
should be a lot more success stories of people making money and creating these communities and
Mm-hmm.
food and for each other. So the farming market, the farmers market. Uh, is that something that people could also uh, join? I mean, become a
I
farmer.
I believe so. I believe so. Farmers market, at least the ones here in the city. I'm talking about the experience I have here in the city. Anyone can go to the farmers market and just display it, very much like they do in Europe, where you go to the market and people have their stalls and have their tables and scream, "Here are the flowers. Here's the here are the vegetables. Here's the chickens." So yes, I think it's
Right.
doable.
And there's totally enough space to do this gardening. I mean, the land is, does it belong to you if it's around your house?
If it's your house, you can garden everywhere. There's a movement of people saying get rid of lawns because in the United States we love lawns. Say plant gardens instead. So you start talking about all these things. Oh, we're going to run out of food. Well, stop for a moment and look at a village that starts producing their own food. They don't need to be going in a car or walk 2, 3, 20 miles to get their food. They can do it right there. There's a beautiful story, and it's in a website called Wypard. And Wypard is a young agricultural professionals developing techniques. And there was this young boy I shouldn't say boy, he was a young man who did very well in college. And his father said, "What do you want?" And the boy said, "I would like you to buy me a piece of property." And the father was, "You
You
just
should
went
be
to
a
this
lawyer.
fantastic, right? You just went to this fantastic university when you have this fantastic degree, and you want to do what?" And he persisted, and he started with a small plot of land, and repaid his growing and growing, and now the people in his community go to him to get fresh. And I mean, it's really marvelous to go over and say to your neighbor, that tomato is the one that I want, and just pluck it off with the plant. And this is what he's doing. So all his friends that made fun of him, they're working 9 to 5, and who knows how they will get ahead. But this young man is his own boss, and he knows what he's doing, and he knows he's going to keep making this bigger and bigger. So there's a lot going on. One of the things that I would like to bring to the forefront is for youth and for people with more seasoned, more mature, but especially for youth, the importance of agriculture. I'm working very hard to bring up the status quo of agriculture, because a lot of people think of it, it's not, it's not computing, it's not a doctor, it's not a lawyer, etc. But you know what? If you go to a doctor's office and you go over there and say, "Can I have something to eat? Can you provide me with produce?" No. So we need the millennials that are coming, the 80 million that are coming into this generation, to do agriculture. And the thing that's fantastic is there are so many new scientific developments and techniques that it's not the way your grandfather and your great grandparents harvested or planted. There's fantastic techniques.
It's interesting that it's even with the soil, when you think it's so constant, there's nothing that can be changed there. There's still so much.
And where in other types of gardening, you have to compost and you have to, replenish the soil and everything. With his formula, it's there. It's there. It's fantastic.
Right. So have you seen his ideas growing somewhere, developing somewhere else, like in developing countries?
He has a foundation, and I contact this gentleman out of the blue, not knowing anything about him. And he was so polite and so sweet. I just said, "Can I interview you? I want to write a book about ending hunger." And he took the time to do the interview. And little did I know, he has a foundation. He's been in Australia. He's been in India. He's been in China. He's been all over the place. But the wonderful thing is that he believes in making food available for everybody. So he teaches anyone who wants to learn. And so there are instructors already who have gone to the Square Food Gardening School, and they get certified. And they're doing very well here in the United States. I don't know about certification overseas. I do know that certification has to be done either at the foundation or by a certified instructor, because it's a very specific technique to make sure that what we say we can do actually gets done. So he wants to start going into bases for the veterans, and doing all kinds of roof gardening. So he's about 85, and he runs circles around me. So
the earth gives you power.
Yes, it does. Our little earth. We should be very careful, and we should become better stewards, because I don't understand people who do deforestation, who do pollution, and who leave it that way. I mean, I don't know of another planet that we can be moving to, uh, unless these billionaires, the one percenters, have a new planet they're going to conquer and leave us here with this mess. But they live here too, so it is a stewardship, and it's the stewardship of our little bit of Earth. And Mother Earth is resilient. It's just resilient. If you in one of my groups, Sustainable Food for the Globe think tank, which is a G plus Google plus group, my picture is of a plant coming through. Not a plant, but just some little greenery coming up through the cracks of a road, a gravel, and we're going to run out of space. Well, we can tear up some roads if need be. I mean, choose. Do you need the road, or do you need the land for the food? There is a change going on. This is happening everywhere. You see groups that are into organic gardening, or gardening in small containers, gardening on walls. They just lots and lots of people are very concerned about self-sufficiency, and they're very concerned that several years down the road it's going to be very, very expensive to get food. So on that note, one of the areas that I also recommend is Heifer International, because they give like to a family, you donate a chicken or two so that the family has an egg. They can have eggs. Give them rabbits. The rabbits reproduce. They can sell them. So there's a whole lot of people wanting to do things, and one of the goals of the people that I've affiliated with is to unite as many of these groups as possible, because to speak under one umbrella, because there's so many that if we get coordinated and organized, it's a very large grassroots movement.
Right. Norma, one more question before we wrap up. I mean, I have a lot of other questions. So what kind of soil do you need to do that? Is it a special type of soil?
Yes, it's Mills soil, and but you can also do it with different. If you cannot get his soil, you can compose the soil. He gives you what you need, something like alfalfa sprouts and certain kind of dirt and certain kinds of organic fertilizers and things like that. His mix is just been tested through and through. So yes, it can be done with other kind of soil, but he cannot say, if you do it with other kind of soil, I don't know how much you're going to produce, because I don't know how well you're tending that soil, or if that soil has weed seeds in them, So there are a group already that are making available square foot gardens that you can chip them, and that's one of the things that I really want to do in Zambia. I want to work with Dr. Siami and start a square foot gardening in a community for women, so that they can secure the food, make the money, and move forward. For every one woman that you help, she will help 10 others. So that is extremely important that women be aware that we think very differently. We think very community. we're the ones, we have children, so we have to make sure we think of the future. Might be plan B, but I think it's plan women.
I like this. Awesome. Oh my God, Norma. On this note, it was so awesome to have a chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming over and doing this interview with me.
You are more than welcome, and I have a tidbit for you. I'll be sharing it with you next year about a university that we're working on. But
Right.
you'll be the first to know.
Yes, the
You'll be the
secret
first to know.
university.
It's Energon University, but I'll tell you all about it when I'm given the okay.
Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It was delightful.
Thank you for listening to Immigrant Women Talk podcast. I would love to get to know you, so come over to immigrantwomentalk.org and leave a comment. Let me know about your challenges, and I will find an expert who will offer a solution. If you would like to join the community of immigrant women, connect with the guests or with me, go to immigrantwomentalk.org. I'm Galina Bilaeva, and I will talk to you next time.